Hey guys, good day. In our last video, we were able to create the dashboard page of our inventory management system. So now, in this video, we are going to transform our HTML file into a PHP file and start working with the database. So for this one, we'll just need to create a users table, users data, and then make the login page connect with our database. So but before that one, I have tutorials on how we can install, since I'm not going to discuss on how to install XAMPP or PHP in this video. So you can just follow this video for the installation and you can start working with PHP. So now, before we start, I'm just going to put or create a new file, a folder. So before I put my files, the IMS inside the documents, so I'm going to move this inside my XAMPP installation. So it should be under or inside the htdocs, and I'll just paste this one. So now here I'm going to open that folder. IMS. Then I'll just close this one. And make sure we start our XAMPP. So I'm in XAMPP 2. So I just need to click on this one, the XAMPP control, and then start the Apache in MySQL module. And here in our browser, we just need to type localhost and then the folder inside the htdocs, which is the IMS. And as you can see, we have the files. So we have the dashboard, the homepage, then the login, and then also the assets. So first thing we need to do is transform our file into a PHP file. So you just need to change this extension to PHP. PHP, and also this one. So now it's a PHP file, and so we want the user to visit our site. So once the user first visited our site, the first page that will be displayed is the homepage.php. So you can just do this one, homepage.php, and as you can see, it is loaded successfully. However, we want to remove that homepage.php, so we can just change the name of the homepage to index. So automatically, without the file name, and when I hit the enter, PHP will look for that index.php file, and that will be like the homepage. So that will be the first page that will be loaded. And if you don't have that index.php, you can just, or maybe you have a different file name like a homepage, so you can just type in the homepage.php, since we don't have this right now, so to return error. So So we need to update the login. So instead of this one, it will be PHP. So click. So it proceeds us to the login page. So before we start connecting our database, let's just discuss first about what is a database. So right now I'm using a XAMPP server, so it acts like a server in our local machine, and we can easily access or manage our databases inside this software. So it's a software that will help us access or manage our databases. So right now it is empty, so I think these are the schema of our MySQL. I don't know, I'm not sure about this one, but for this one, you can do a query the database, like maybe add, update, or create. So here are the list of your databases. So for our project, so we'll just need to create a database called inventory. So just click on the new, and then here you can just create inventory and create. So now we have the inventory created. Then here we can create a table. So basically a table, it's a storage of our data. So it's a storage of a data or related data, which is a columns and rows. So let's do a word, and then so basically just need to insert the table so this is what the table look like in database. So it has a rows or a record, so that means a record of the data inside our table. And then here there will be columns, which is the octacy property. So for example, this one, we have a users table, and then so users, we need to assign an ID, a unique ID. So we have an ID column. Can also have first name, last name, and then maybe a password. And then let's add a new column, password, and then email. So these are the properties of our users table. We have ID, first name, last name, password, and email. So now here will be a record of the users. So we can have the an ID of 1, and the first name is John Doe. Password is password, email. Then the next row would be another record for a user. So Jane, Dane, then email. So basically that's a datable. That's a table for our database. So here we can just create our table through this application. So as you can see, we just need to add a table name. So let's use users, and 1 2 3 4 5. Let's add 5. Actually, we need to insert columns to the right. Insert columns to the right. We'll add a new table created at dated at, so we know when the user was created and then the date it was updated. So 7 tables. Then we just need to hit go, and then here you need to insert or define these properties. So for the name column, so this refers to this one, and then the type, so it's the value type for each column. So like for an ID, it's accept the number, first name, last name, password. So we can just make that one as a string, and then here this will be a timestamp for the date format or the date value. So here let's just do create these properties. So I just finished defining the properties or the columns for our tables. So for the ID, it's an integer, and then I need to add in or set the auto increment and check the box. So that means once you add a new user, there will be a unique, so the ID will act as a unique identifier for that record. So that means if I have 2 people that has the same names, first name are almost the same or maybe the same, then the ID will be the identifier between the 2 same records. Now for the first name, last name, and then password and email, I just set the type to varchar. So a varchar is a string, however the length is 50, but if you have a first name that has a length of 7, then the length of value for that record is only 7. So the 50 here is just the maximum, and yeah, 50 is the maximum. So if you have 60 characters of first name, then only the 50 characters will be stored. However, if you have 7, then the 7 characters, it won't have the 50 are occupied, or how do you call that one? I mean the columns will never have a 50 length, it will only have 7. So it varies. So there's also another thing with this character, and character is different with varchar, since the character will have, if you set the 50 here and you only have a name or characters of 20, then that column will have a size of 50, even if its actual size it's only 7. So it's not size, I mean you save a lot of space or size when you use a varchar. And then for the created data and updated data, we just use date time, so it will store a date and the time. The creation are updating the user. So now once we save, so as you can see, our inventory has now one table, which is the users. So now in our SQL we can do insert that here. However, for this one we can also use MySQL query, but we don't have a way to insert data in from our front end or from our system. So for now, to make the login work, we need to insert it manually in the localhost. So let's add a new name, Jane. So for this one we can just leave it empty, since it will have an auto incrementing value, Jane Doe, and let's set the password too. Then the email will be janedoe@ims.com. The email also, we are going to use this one as our the username. So to create that, you can just do the current time and then go. So once we browse, so we have now one record of our one user for our system. So now in our IMS login page, we are going to use Jane Doe. So this email is a username, and here can just, once we hit the login, it will redirect us to the dashboard page. Now let's go back to our login page. Then here, so inside the form action, we just need to create the action. So once the form is submit, we need to set the page that will process the form. So in this case, we can just make use the login page to process or create a new file for processing. So for this one, we can just use this page to process the form data, so the username and then the password. So we can just should be login.php. Here the method is post. So we can, so there's another type which is get, which I don't recommend for this one, since once we use a get method. So if I'm going to type so the important thing is we need to update first or add the name attribute. So since this is a username and a password, so the difference between get and then the post is that, so right now I'm in get, I'm going to do Jane then the password, and log in the page. As you can see in your browser, in your URL or address URL, the data or the value you posted can be seen inside the address bar, and data like password or sensitive data are not supposed to be shown publicly. And as you can see here, using get would display the data here in our address bar, and this will be recorded in our browser history. So it is not good to use Git when submitting this type of information. So for post, so do that one. So as you can see, it is not shown in the address bar, so it is still inside the login page, since our method or the action will be it will redirect us to the login.php. So on the top of this page, we can add our code to process. So now we can just this is statement here will check if we already post the data or click the login button. So as you can see here, once we log in, line 4, so let's just so we log in the data, and as you can see here, it is showing us this is statement. That means we click the login button. So now, since we need to get username and password. So in order to get those data, we can just use the post variable. So this is a global variable. So if I'm going to bar dump that variable, and then do a username, password, as you can see here, we can just grab these keys, the username and password, and these are the values, since this will give us an array of the data we submitted here, and the keys here, the username and password, is based on the name attribute value you assign to those fields. So we can just use a name or store this data here. So the username, then the password, so now we are going to connect with our database. So for this one, we can just create a new file, create a new folder, PHP or database. Then a new file, and we'll name this one connection.php. So here, this is where we put our PHP code for connection or connecting the database. So now so in order to connect our system to the database, we need to add the server name. So since we are in a local host, the default name is the local host. The username is root, and the password is password or empty. So let's add a comment connecting to database. Then here we need to wrap the connection in our apply catch code. So once there's an error, we can just grab those error and stop running the code, or maybe just display what the error is. So we can grab the connection, the new PDO. So this is an object or the method, so we can connect. So it's a built-in object, or a method in how we can connect to our database. Then here we can add grab this data here. So MySQL, since we are using MySQL, so the host is the server name, and the DB name is inventory. Then the username, which is this one, and the password. Then here we need to set the PDO error mode to exception. So then echo connected successfully. So this is another way of connecting the database. So there are still other ways on to do that one. So you can use the MySQLi or the MySQL, that for this one we'll just use the PDO. So for this one we need to include our connection file here, so we can just use the URL the location, so database connection.php, do a login, and as you can see here, it says connected successfully, so that means there's no error in our connection file. So the include function here will just plug in or fetch the connection.php file, so we'll have access of the data from this page to this page. So here we need to remove, so let's just try the the catch if this one is an error. So let's just make the DB name wrong, then let's do a login, so it didn't do anything, so, or maybe echo anything. So let's do, I think it's called get message. So as you can see, it is displaying that we don't have in inventory database, which is true because we don't have that database created in our MySQL. So now we can catch that message, store it inside our variable. And then here we need to remove, so we don't see that message successfully connected. And then in our login.php we can add a new dev, so that will act as an error message container. So once it throws an error, maybe we can display it in our login page. So maybe we'll use the, I think we can use this one. So error, and then we use this message, we echo the message. So now since we don't have the error, the error message set, so we can just add this one as a default and to empty. Then so actually, since we can move the error message here, so this caused an error because the error message is only declared once we submit or log in the user, so that is why it's showing us that there is no error message variable. So once we do a refresh, it will be removed, and this is the error. So for this one, we can just set the maybe a font, a background white, color of red, and a font size. maybe 20 px and add the padding of 10. So here in our CSS file, so let's add the container. Or add an ID and then add the styling. It's not working. So I need to do a hard refresh on that one. So now we have the error. However, the error should only be displayed once there is an error. So we can just add a PHP code and do this one. So if there is, or maybe if there's an invalid or error message, we will display this code. So if there's an error of our code, then the error message will be displayed. So once we refresh, so it's now removed. Then once we put random or login the page, the error will be displayed. So now let's try to correct the DB name. Then log in again, so we don't see the error since we have the correct DB credentials. Now the next thing to do is query and check if the username and the password is set in our database. Now let's create our query. So select all from our users table. So this is the table we are going to query, and then the all here is the properties. So first name, last name, and then password. So where users that email equals password, the username, so the user inputted value, and users that password equals the password. So let's button the query. So use Janjan So now let's try to prepare our query and then get the result, execute. So now it's showing us a true value, so that means we are able to execute the query, no error. So now instead of the result, we need to add or get the count. So just remove the result for now, then let's just count how many rows. So there are 0, so let's try to log in with the correct email and a password. So as you can see, it returned as 1. That means we have 1 record. So for this one, you can just do if row count is greater than 0. That means there is user, or a user is inside our system. Else we can use the error message and set that one that please make sure that username and password are correct. So let's try to log in with the dummy. So as you can see here, it shows us that the password and username are incorrect. So let's try to make this one transform to bold, make it strong, and then the message encapsulate this one to another p tag. Actually we'll just need to remove that one. So let's try to use the correct email and correct password. Let's just update this one to pass, so we can easily type in the email. This one, Jane Doe, then pass. So as you can see, the error message is gone. So let's try to do again. Let's do the correct email and then pass. So now inside this here, we are going to redirect the user to the dashboard page. So in order to do that one, so in our dashboard page, we have name, last name, and then yeah, so it's just the last name. So we need to store the user's data in our any session. So storing our user's data in a session variable means that we can access that variable from any of our page. So to work with session, you need to make sure to put this here in our at the start of our PHP file or any of our page. So we'll have session start, and then here, so let's add a query and then set the limit to 1, so we can just get the first result, and later we'll add a system that will add a new user, which will avoid duplicates. So let's do then pass. So here let's fetch the result. So it returns me an array of results, so we can just set the fetch method or result mode into an associative array. So it's more cleaner. We remove those index keys, or yeah, numbered index. So since this one we need to have one user, we don't need to do a looping of this value. We can just do result our user. Let's just move that one inside the success, or if there's a value found or a record found, fetch all and then 0, since this is the index 0, so that will return us the first element. And as you can see, we have the first element. So now we can store that one in a session variable, user, and then user. So when we do bar down the user or the session, we'll have the same result since we just stored the login user in the session variable. Then here we need to redirect our user to the dashboard.php. So we can just do header, location, dashboard.php. So let's try to log in. Error. Use the correct password, and it is now redirecting us to the dashboard.php. So now we need to update some data here. So the Gomez, so instead of the Gomez, we'll add the name. So since in our index or login PHP we store the user's value in a session, so in the dashboard page we can get the session variable, but first we need to add that file inside the session, and then here we can now bar dump this session. So let's just bar dump the user session variable. As you can see, we have the user's value. So if we do without the session start, will give us an error. So we can just use here the user to store that session or the user's data. Then instead of Gomez, we can use the user variable. Then first name, so it's Jane. So last name. So let's try to create a new record. Nicole, password is Nicole, email is so now once we sign in Nicole, the password is Nicole. So once we log in, as you can see, it will be Nicole. So this is now dynamic. So the next thing we need to do is the logout. So once we log out, so it's easy, we just need to delete the current session or destroy all the session variables. So in our dashboard.php, so we can just call logout.php page. Then here, once the user click on the logout file or button will redirect us to the logout.php, and this file will just remove or unset all the variables and then destroy. So now when I'm going to log out the page, sorry, just remove this forward or backward slash. So once when I do a log out, we need to do a session start here. So let's just log out again. So now once we visit our dashboard.php, as you can see here, we don't have the users variable since we log out or remove those sessions, and that's how we can use the session variables to allow or disallow users. Once they're not signed in, they can't see the dashboard page. So if session user is not set, then location would be the index.php. So when I refresh this one, I will be up, not the index but the login.php, sorry, so dashboard. So as you can see, I can't access the dashboard. And also for the login page, if so for this one, if the session variable user is set, which means the user is not logged in, then we don't need to show the login page. Since the user is already logged in, we can just do header location dashboard.php. So right now, since no one is logged in, the login page is showing. However, let's try to log in Nico, and password is Nico. So now we're in the dashboard. So if we are going to go to login.php, we can't access since we are already logged in. Alright.
Please subscribe to our channel. I'll put the link of our channel below, and you can also watch our playlist of PHP QA and then HTML for beginners. So I just started this channel, but every week we'll be uploading videos. So that's it, guys. Thank you.